Pascal Siakam is coming to the Indiana Pacers. A lot of stuff is going to the Toronto Raptors. Somehow the Pelicans got involved. What all is going on? Is this great for the Pacers? Is this a good deal? How does Siakam fit? We'll cover it all today in some order on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy whatever day you're listening, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the talk of the league right now, the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, obviously, emergency time. Pascal Siakam is heading to the Indiana Pacers. Woj reported it today. Shams reported it soon after. All the details have been rolling in for the last hour. And there's a lot to break down. Was this worth it? How does Siakam fit? How did this all come to be? Because the Pelicans are somehow involved in a way that is sort of significant and smart, of course, as the Pacers have done in many of their bigger trades by the Pacers. We have a lot to get to. I have to talk slower. And thankfully, there's someone here for me to bounce my ideas off of who wrote Spicy P on the whiteboard in the classroom. It's Derek Kramer from iPacersblog, who thankfully I was going to pick you anyway, as you know, but texted me and said, can we talk about this? And I was happy to do it. Derek, give me your initial reaction before we dive into everything that happened today.
Just holy crap, it actually happened. That was my initial reaction, especially after getting like the mid-negotiation update with the specific offer details. Like, I don't remember too many like happening like this like the next day. So I was very surprised that it happened this quickly, honestly, because you never know when you get those kind of details. And then it was just kind of diving in, thinking about like what are all the details, the extra little things that we're going to find out, and the great fun that trades bring to the Twitterverse.
Yeah, like I said yesterday, it was rare that reporting has details from both sides, right? That is typically unusual, which either meant to me that it was kind of soonish coming, or that it would not happen until the last possible moment. It was option A. So the full trade, as we have come to discover over the last 45 minutes to an hour, the Pelicans got involved because they wanted to get under the tax. So they are trading their second-round pick this year and Kyra Lewis to the Pacers for the minimum amount of cash a team can send in a trade. So the Pacers basically give up nothing for Kyra Lewis and a second-rounder, which is important because that means the Pacers now had more salary. They could immediately re-aggregate to Toronto because they took Kyra Lewis into cap space. So going from the Pacers to the Raptors for Siakam is Bruce Brown and his contract, which the second that was signed, it was tradable. Team option next year. The Raptors could flip him this year. The last game he played for the Pacers was probably his best game for the Pacers in Denver. One of his best, at least he was good. Jordan Nwora on an expiring deal. Tough season for him, not on the court, just situationally. Expiring contract that could not be extended. And Kyra Lewis, who never touched the floor for the Pacers, obviously. That is enough for the Pacers to take Siakam into their space. They'll now be pretty close to the salary cap line. And then 3 firsts will be going from the Pacers to the Raptors. That will be their 2024 first-rounder, their own, protected picks 1 through 3. Their 2024 first from OKC they got at draft night last year, which could be any number of firsts, but not the Pacers. And the Pacers 2026 first-rounder, protected 1 through 4. If it doesn't convey, it would be 2027 protected 1 through 4. If somehow the Pacers pick in the top 4 both of those years, something absolutely terrible has happened in the next 3 years of our lives, and then it would become 2 second-rounders sent to the Toronto Raptors. So what you need to know from the Pacers' perspective, the stuff they had this morning that they sent to the Raptors was 3 first-rounders, Bruce Brown and Jordan Nwora. Derek, do you think that's a good price? Does that make sense to you? What do you think of the protections? I keep rambling and saying stuff. Please stop me.
I think this is kind of the ideal thing you would want to give up for Siakam. Like, picks primarily is the prize for the Raptors. Bruce Brown is obviously a good player, but they have a lot of like his size of players, and he was like kind of redundant with the skills that Nembhard brings in some ways. So I think it makes perfect sense, especially with kind of immediate follow-up that Siakam's excited to come to Indiana, is excited.
We'll get there. Very important.
Yes. but excited to potentially rework that contract this summer. So yeah, that's obviously a big key here. But with where those picks currently stand and adding those light protections in case of the Pacers world ending in some way for them to fall all the way down that low, or they get lucky in the lottery or something, whatever. Yeah, just like it seems like a perfect, worthwhile risk to take to get and like a recently all NBA caliber forward at a spot that they've needed for years.
Yeah, they have size at the 4 now, which is crazy. Obi Toppin was assuming that role, and we will get to Obi Toppin because he's a very interesting player now all of a sudden to me. Okay, picks-wise, let's start with this year's draft. So the reason I surmised yesterday that this would be the case, that both 2024 picks would be in it, is because now the Pacers can, 1, trade the inverse protected picks from the drafts that they didn't trade today, and 2, they can now trade 2028, or I guess first available 2029 and 2031. So they can still trade 2 firsts. They still have all their young dudes. I think that's part of the value of the stepping rule, not having to trade 2 firsts across different drafts. So that always made the most sense to me. The protections probably won't matter, like I joked earlier, but I think it's significant that both of this year's picks aren't particularly awesome, especially because Pascal Siakam's on the Pacers now, right? So this year's pick, in theory, assuming it doesn't take forever for some acclimation to happen, will be worse. And right now it is in a 3-way tie for 17th, but the Pacers win. Let's say they win tomorrow in Sacramento. Now all of a sudden it's 22nd, right? Like that's not a good pick. The OKC pick is 27th. Like 2 late firsts, you're not as pressed about that if you're the Pacers, especially because their draft record hasn't been the craziest good thing ever. Since Miles Turner, no one has gotten a second contract. So I think they'll be happy with doing picks instead of their young guys. And that's the other part of this, right? As you saw in the OG Anunoby trade from the Raptors, they wanted young guys. They got quickly. Barrett's young, although he's already gotten paid. They got a pretty good second, right? But they want it quickly. He's a great young talent. Young talent that's already established is very valuable. For the Pacers to hold on to their established young talent of Andrew Nembhard and Benedict Mathurin, and we'll see what Jarace Walker is, but to keep a top 10 pick, something they very rarely have, I think was also important, right? We got a bunch of reporting in recent months, weeks, whatever, about them not wanting to give up Jarace Walker or Benedict Mathurin in a deal like this. And maybe some of the smaller, younger pieces could have been in there, but also significant to me, they kept Nesmith in this. So they still have young, interesting stuff, right? And they still have tradable firsts. And as painful as it is in the moment to hear, if you're a fan of the Pacers, right? When they make a draft night trade for a future first, it's like, that's boring. Flexibility is boring. And it is. It's boring to say. But this is why they talk about it all the time. Because at some point, it allows you to do this. It allows you to trade a guy you just signed, a guy you got in not a throw-in, but like a salary dump last year for Jay Crowder, and 3 firsts for a potential star and an amazing fit in Pascal Siakam. From a price perspective to me, assuming he doesn't leave, which we will talk about in just a second, Pacers did pretty well, I think. They did a pretty good job of landing a quality player, with the biggest thing they may lose is, let's say they have a crummy 2025-26 season, like a 17th pick could be the best asset they trade in this, potentially, depending on what you think about Bruce Brown.
Yeah, I think just think about what the roster looks like now. Like the only thing that changes in the rotation, main thing that changes is you take Bruce Brown out and replace him with Pascal Siakam. And that alone just makes so many things make more sense on this team that I think we're gonna see dividends this year. And obviously, long term is the question, but I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to see what this looks like once Tyrese is back, and really he should help while Tyrese is still out for those few games as well. Hopefully, he's back in that right after that 2-week time is over.
So some minor geekery, if you will, let me. Derek. Okay, 1, the trade with New Orleans has to happen first because Kyra Lewis, because his contract is going into the Pacers cap space, will be rerouted to Toronto and have his contract aggregated in that trade. So, because Kyra Lewis is coming to the Pacers for no players, the Pacers have to waive someone. Lo and behold, James Johnson, the king of getting paid twice by the Pacers, might be getting paid twice by the Pacers again. He will be the guy to be waived. At least that's what the reporting is and what I have reported. So knock on wood that remains the case. If he clears waivers, the Pacers would like to bring him back. And they will open up a roster spot because they're trading 3 guys for 1. In fact, they'll still have an open roster spot. after the trade in theory, which is another thing to talk about. But that's part one. James Johnson will be waived to facilitate their trade with New Orleans, which is minimum cash for Kyra Lewis and a second. It's the worst of the Pelicans and Bulls seconds, so not very good. Pacers could have 3 picks in the 50s this year. No idea how you manage that. Doesn't matter. That's a far-off problem. And then that is geekery number one. Number two is they'll have to slash someone's cap hold to bring in Kyra Lewis. That doesn't matter. But I think the interesting things is now they will have a roster spot, but they do get a second in this. Does that mean anything to you? Does it matter?
I did not realize the second was in this draft. So no, everything I hear about this draft is it's not super deep. So picks in the 50s in this one. Pick a random international guy. See what happens. Is that the plan?
If the draft was today, the Pacers' only picks would be 51, 53, and 58. You could trade all three for 40, maybe.
The one thing that if they change it to 2 nights, that would make it much more bearable. Much more bearable to wait for the 51, 53, and 58 to then just be like dealt away at the last moment, and they end up making like none of those picks.
Plenty more to talk about. Value perspective, Siakam's fit on the Pacers, and the Pacers doing the thing. But we've got to start with Siakam's willingness to re-sign. Before we talk about any of that, though, have to really quickly dive into 2 wonderful groups of people. First up is the great folks over at PrizePicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. For example, Anthony Davis, more than or less than 2 blocks in a game, or Damian Lillard for more or less than 4 3-pointers made in a game. Maybe not those exact lines, but something similar. You can also do, with football going on, basketball plus football in a specials combo league. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus receptions. They even have a reboot policy on PrizePicks, so if one of your players gets injured, you can reboot. Boom, your skin is still in the game. You're not kicked out just because one of your guys gets hurt. One of the best ways to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA with the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100 at PrizePicks. Daily fantasy sports made easy. And got to talk to you guys about the wonderful people over at LinkedIn. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn Jobs knows that success all depends on the team you surround yourself with, and that is why they've created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free, kind of like Pascal Siakam. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which is why it's the best place to hire. It's super easy when you have that many quality candidates. It's so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. And LinkedIn also knows small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free. How about that? At LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNBA. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Thanks for Derek for sitting there for 2 minutes while I talked about other companies. Check out Sean Woodley, Locked On Raptors, for that side of the trade. Of course, he's going to have a lot to say about the Raptors. And Spicy P, a champion, with its 1 champion out and Bruce Brown, another one in. Actually, 2 champions out, Bruce Brown and Nwora for Siakam. 3 champions in a trade. Either way, a legend in Toronto in Pascal Siakam. Sean Woodley with Locked On Raptors is your next place to go. Dirk, the natural follow-up here, of course, is, and the risk that everyone has talked about in trading for Siakam and Anunoby is he's a free agent in 5 months. I can do math. 5 months when July 1st rolls around. Remember, everyone, I would first say with this. 1, under the new CBA, incumbent team can negotiate after the finals. So the Pacers can try to get Siakam re-signed and done earlier than July 1st this year. But that is not that relevant. I mean, we all know what the offering is and how it works. The only thing that I think is different than a normal summer, right? Usually everybody talks about cap space and blah, blah, blah. Usually teams with cap space are bad. So it's harder for them to lure good players. Philly is an exception this year, and they are the team worth keeping an eye on. But I'm rambling too much. The talk has been, is it risky trading for a player who could be a rental? And I have always said yes, but I also say I think that teams are typically smart and wouldn't do something stupid without some assurances, at least from a player that they would stay around. Siakam's agents are Andrew Nemhard's agents, is something to note. And the other thing to note is 2 things. 1, from Mark Spears of ESPN's Anscape. He talked to Pascal Siakam's agent, Todd Ramasar. And Todd Ramasar said, I'm excited that Pascal is getting a first-class opportunity with the Pacers, being paired with Tyrese and Miles and being coached by a great coach in Rick Carlisle. His future there looks bright. And then we got Woj later in the day, actually earlier, I don't remember the order, who said, Pascal Siakam is excited about the deal to the Pacers and expected to be eager to work out a new contract with the franchise this summer. Does that make you feel better? Does that sound like agent speak? How important is that part of this now to you? Where do you land on all of the Pascal Siakam's future with the Pacers part of this?
Yeah, I think like that can't make you feel worse. Like that.
Yeah,
that's 1,000% a positive. Like the agent doesn't have to make any kind of comment after a trade. Like you don't always hear an agent be like, yay or nay. They don't chime in all the time after every Wojbomb or Shams thing. So, I mean, it's exactly what you want to hear. Like it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. Like things can always happen and change. But like that's exactly what we heard what I'm sure they told the Pacers. Like, yes, he would like it there. We're not going to commit to anything, obviously, but we like the idea of that long term is all you really want. And considering that they like kept all of that young talent and just sent out the picks, like that's the exact type of risk that feels like it's worth it to get this guy in the building.
Yeah, I think that is right. So here's what the Pacers have advantage-wise now. They can offer I'm not saying they should do this. I'm just saying they can. They can offer Pascal Siakam 5 years. No one else in the NBA can. They can offer Pascal Siakam 8% raises. No one else in the NBA can. Siakam turns 30 in April. He's only played 8 years in the pros. And all that notwithstanding, this is probably the last big contract he's ever going to get. Maybe not. Probably. So his max is huge. His max would be the same as Tyrese Halliburton's 5-year max at full value, assuming Tyrese Halliburton makes All-NBA. If the cap goes up the full amount, it'd be 5 years, $260 million. I will stop right there and say, I highly doubt Pascal Siakam is getting 5 years, $260 million from the Pacers. I think he could get a good amount of money. I don't think he would be that much. The reason I would pause there is, one, in the new CBA, money is tighter. It just is. And my example to point to would be Kawhi M.F. Leonard just got a 3-year non-max contract extension with the Clippers. Now, granted, he has an injury past, but Siakam's not like the perfect bill of health ever, too. So I don't think he's going to get the full boat, everything I just said, but the raises matter. The Pacers' years advantage matters. They have him on their team. That all is significant to me. And again, they wouldn't do this without some thought that they could hopefully keep him in the fold. The other thing I would add, and this goes back to the in-season tournament really before that, right? Kevin Pritchard said forever ago, I can't remember the first time he said it, but that they believe in Tyrese Halliburton's ability to recruit. Woj reported on that again at the in-season tournament, talking specifically to Tyrese Halliburton. And that is twofold, right? That is, of course, recruiting externally, right? Hey, free agent, come play for the Pacers. I'm going to make you look good. I'm going to get you the ball. We're fun and good and ascending. Look at us go. And that's all true. That's awesome. There's also the other side of that, which is recruiting guys who are already on your team. Hey, dude, look at this. We're good. You could stay. I'll get you paid. Life is good. Look how much better I made. Aaron Nesmith, Miles Turner, name 5 Pacers if you want. Obi Toppin, Jalen Smith, all these guys. Jordan Nwora, who got in the trade, that he could say, I made them look good or better. You're next, right? So I think the Pacers, again, probably wouldn't have done this without some reasonable feeling they could keep him. But 2, I think that's a big part of it is that they have a lot of stuff in their favor that not saying anything's guaranteed, and they deserve a ton of criticism if he leaves in the summer, but they should feel good about it to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think an important thing about Tyrese could have tried to recruit him as a free agent this summer, but then the Pacers are going to have to get rid of a lot more than just Bruce Brown and Jordan Nwora to make the space available to sign him.
Yes.
So that's,
I was going to get there. Yes.
So that's the price. Yeah, that's the price that they're paying and making that trade now, getting him on the team now, so they don't have to get rid of as many people to get him on the roster potentially long term. So that's all. That's part of the equation too. And I like what you said about the Kawhi factor. That should set the market somewhat in terms of Kawhi didn't get a max maybe we should talk about something less than that. So I think that'll help there with the terms. But yeah, like it makes a ton of sense, everything to me.
It does. And you nailed the last part of this. And I've said this on this show a couple times, right? If the players involved in a trade like this, like people say this, I said this about Anunoby and Siakam. Why trade for them if you can just sign them? Well, the guys they would have had to let go of to sign him, because remember, they extended Tyrese Haliburton, they extended Aaron Nesmith. I forget, they got a third player with more money than just this year. My brain does not work very well today. I'm having a lot of trouble. Anyway, to actually clear enough space to sign him, they would have had to lose Bruce Brown anyway, probably lose Buddy Hield, which is why the New Orleans part of this is so fascinating to me. And maybe lose McConnell and Jalen Smith, right? Definitely lose Nwora, who's going to be a free agent, right? To clear enough space to actually do that, right? So now they have him in-house. They have his bird rights, which is significant in keeping him. You know, they can sort out their team, figure out how good he is, see what they look like in the postseason, assuming they get there, right? A lot of stuff is now easier. Now, is it 3 first-round picks easier? That's why I think my brain says they're confident they can keep him, right? Because 3 first-round picks, even if they're protected and probably won't be awesome, it's still a lot, right? I want to beat this into people's heads, so I'm going to say it again. Just pretend in 2026 the Pacers don't have a great year, right? Right now, they would have the 17th pick, and they should be better then, and for many reasons. So let's pretend they have the same season then that they have now. Is trading pick 17, 20, 27 like that much for a guy you could have for multiple years who's a stud? Probably not. So I still think with 3 firsts, you have some reasonable confidence you're going to keep him because of that push and pull I just said. But they gave up guys they would have had to lose to sign him anyway. So I think they've got to feel pretty good about all of that. Is there any other part of the trade specifically you think we haven't gotten to?
Not in terms of like details, thinking long term. I think we just haven't talked about on-court stuff now.
Yes, we have 2 things left: on-court stuff and sorting out the rest of the team. Before we get to that, though, we have to really quickly talk about the lovely people over at Gametime. The best way to buy tickets to events near you. How should I know? I used it. I went to New York. I wanted to watch New York Liberty play. I hopped on Gametime. Didn't have to worry at all. Everything that they say is so true and so great. You can get last-minute tickets. I bought on the day of the game. You know they're going to be cheap. You know exactly the view you're going to get from your seat because they show you right in the app. It's going to give you the lowest price you can get and a lot of other stuff. I like seeing the view. I like being able to get a day of. Something I like that is not true any other place you get tickets to events. You get the all-in price. You don't pick it at a number, and then you go to check out, and it's like twice as high. You get the full total up front, and they have the game time guarantee, meaning you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or for less elsewhere, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. You know you're getting the best deal. You can get it the day of. You can see exactly what you're going to see. It is a win-win-win and the best way to buy tickets. I can attest to this. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off at Gametime. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. If you're super interested in the tax mechanics of the Pelicans getting off of Kyra Lewis's money for a second rounder and getting some cash to do it, Jake Madison at Locked On Pelicans can break down the third team in this trade. I'm sure everybody's dying to know more about that. Dying to. And that's the most common question I've gotten since the trade. Hey, I went on the trade machine and Nwora and Brown for Siakam isn't legal. Yes, because it's also Kyra Lewis. And I get that that's confusing, and I understand. I'm doing my best. I'm apparently not explaining it very well. We'll see what comes of this in the coming days. 2 more things I want to talk about. 1 is his fit on the team, and 2 is the team. Someone's a loser here. I think potentially 2 guys are losers here, right? I assume you'll share this opinion, but I'll just say this now. Siakam's going to start, right? So Jalen Smith is not going to start, right? So some big losers on the Pacers roster, potentially. Isaiah Jackson, Obi Toppin, certainly, right? Anyone who could be playing 3-4 off the bench, minutes could be dropping. So one of either Isaiah Jackson's not playing at all, and Jalen Smith is back to the backup 5, or they're going to try Smith 4, Jackson 5, and then Obi Toppin's not playing at all. I have a feeling it will be Jackson, just given what we've seen this season, but I don't know that. Could they change some other stuff elsewhere to find these minutes? Could it be like Haliburton, Nesmith, Siakam, Smith, Turner to start games? Is that possible? Yeah. Should it be? No. No, it should not be. So I don't know who's going to start at the 2. Maybe it's Hield. Maybe it's Mathurin. Derek wants it to be the TMNTs. That you can bother him for that information. Either way, someone likely, if they acquired a front court player for a backcourt player, so someone on the front court is a loser by default. And so that lends me to think either they could, in the future, there's still 3 weeks till the trade deadline, look to move whoever the loser is, or they'll have to do something else to sort out their rotation. What say you on that before we talk about Siakam's fit?
Yeah, I agree with you on those are the potential losers, 2 of the 3. Obi Toppin's minutes are going to go down regardless. He's probably down to 12 to 15 at best.
Yep.
And then Isaiah or Jalen, and I would assume since Jalen's been starting and he was the backup center until they tried starting him, that it's probably going to be Ijax that goes to the bench. But they've tried to play Isaiah Jackson and sticks together a lot, so possible that they do that at the 4-5. But we'll see. I feel like if that was something they were considering, I feel like they might have just tried to send Obi to the Raptors, but maybe the Raptors didn't want him. So that's also possible. My TMNT thing, that will be Tyrese, Mathurin, Nesmith, Turner, and then Siakam, who's not really needed for the TMNT thing, but it just makes it fun. Doesn't necessarily have to be the starters. Honestly, I think my preference would be Nembhard at the 2.
Wow.
And then having Ben and Buddy and then TJ running the second unit just because of how good he's looked as the backup. And Nembhard's kind of struggled at the point so far this year. So I think that's my preference initially, but I'm okay with any of those 3 guys starting at the 2. I think they would all fit very nicely there.
McConnell and Nembhard are winners because with Bruce Brown out of the team, there is minutes for them every game. There has been already, but now even with Haliburton back, there will be. Okay, wow, that's really interesting. So I think that bench group with McConnell, Mathurin, Hield has been great, right? So maybe that is enough of an argument, and we've seen that the Nembhard-Nesmith wing duo on defense gives the Pacers a lot. You might have a good point. You might have actually just swayed me that makes the most sense. I was going to say, who fits really well with Pascal Siakam is Buddy Hield. The shooting, to create. I mean, he can, like Caitlin described him as like a piece of paper, right? He can slip through any gap on the court. Well, if there's huge gaps because Buddy Hield's spacing, that's great. He hasn't shot it as well this year, though. So I thought in my original head it would be Haliburton, Hield, Nesmith, Pascal, Miles Turner. But you might have convinced me that Nembhard makes a lot of sense. He was great starting at the 2 last year, and his defense is valuable. And they won a defense in the starting 5. And then your bench is McConnell, whatever 2 doesn't start, the other 2 that doesn't start, Obi Toppin, and a backup 5, or Jalen Smith, Isaiah Jackson. But that, again, would surprise me. I'm not ruling it out, but it would surprise me. So still an odd man out, I think, but less so, and they've got a little bit of time to figure it out. I don't know when Siakam's going to debut, but that is, I think, the last Pacers ripple effect to get to. Now let's talk about the 2-time All-NBA player that is now on the Indiana Pacers. He's not that guy anymore. I have to reiterate this if you didn't listen to my podcast yesterday. If you go to Basketball Reference right now, and then you type in the comments on this YouTube video, he's only shooting 31.7% from 3 this year, I'm not replying to you. I'm not interacting with that. That is true. You have successfully sent me a fact from Basketball Reference that does not, one, say his efficiency well this year. He started off awful from 3. He made 1 3 from November 2nd through November 17th. He made 3 threes from November 2nd through the 22nd, so 3 weeks. But if you go from, let's just pick a fun day, how about November 19th through now? So 2 days short of 2 months. He is shooting 36% from deep. That's fantastic. If you make your cutoff New Year's Day, that's super recent, so maybe that's not going to be that interesting. It's much higher, right? There's a lot of ways you could sort this out and say that his first month was awful, but his since November splits are really good, right? He is a more efficient player than that. His season on the whole, his true shooting percentage is 60%. I'm saying all this to say he started awful and has settled into showing that he is still a really nice player. 22 points per game at his size, 6.5 rebounds, 5 assists. I think that's significant on the Pacers, the way they play, the way they move the ball. The random action is going to be fascinating. He can slither through space. He's not the awesomest world-beatingest defender ever, but he has size. I would say he's about a league average defender. 60% true shooting, pretty low turnover rate, on good usage, decent enough defender. yeah, there's going to be warts with his fit because he's not like the lights outest shooter ever. I'm not going to pretend that he is, but he is a better shooter than his percentages say. He's an awesome fit as the second creator they've needed thanks to Tyrese instead of just hoping they get it from someone else every night. I think that he's a really good fit. I've said that all season. I thought he was the better Raptors player fit, and I think that he will provide them a lot. So without not a perfect fit, there's no such thing, but as close as you can get, really good player for the Pacers to have.
Yeah, I think even if you look at his three-point shooting, even if you include the whole season from the corners, he's shooting 45%. So this season, even like corner-wise, he's shooting very well. It's the above the break threes that have not gone well so far this year. I really like, even if he's just a league average defender at 4 now, like that's so much better than having Andrew Nembhard guard Lauri Markkanen or Buddy Hield guarding those guys. Just that alone, getting that league average defender at the 4 and moving everybody down a position and defending guys that they more likely should be is just absolutely, like, that could be game changing. Like, there's a reason why, like, the defense has gotten better just by putting Jalen Smith in the starting lineup.
Yes.
Because even if he's not the best defender at those spots, he at least lets those other guys go down a spot, and they're defending guys that make more sense for them.
That was the point I made about Nesmith after the Jazz game. Like, you can see it with his absence, and it's a little different. But, like, when he's out, a 2 is guarding a 3, or a 4 is guarding a 3, or a 2 is guarding a 4, or Andrew Nembhard's guarding Lauri Markkanen for some reason, because that's the best they could do. That's the best they could do. And so now they have more size. That's going to help a lot. Again, he's not a perfect fit, right? Like, this is hilarious to say. Actually, it's probably TJ McConnell. I take it back. You could make an argument that Pascal Siakam is the worst shooter in the Pacers rotation. I think it's a pretty easy argument to make, right?
Yeah, other than TJ,
But I forgot about McConnell when I was going to say that. But still, that's crazy to me. And that says a lot about his offensive fit. They don't even need him to be a shooter. But, I mean, I think that will be very helpful. There's just, like, nothing he's bad at, which I also think is valuable, right? He's, again, a fantastic rim finisher this season as well. 76.8% from 0 to 3 feet. That's pretty dang good at the rim for Siakam, 50% from 3 to 10 feet. He's just going to allow the Pacers to do so much on the offensive end. Only half of his shots are assisted. I think that number is going to go up with the Pacers in a meaningful way, which should help him a bit. This guy scored 50 points in a game last year. Like, that alone should sell his value. And the other thing about him, his fit, is I've mentioned this, but, like, I was saying this before free agency last year, and part of why I think I was a little higher on Bruce Brown's fit with the Pacers and his skill set, my cat's coming in, that's awesome, is that Tyrese Haliburton is an awesome creator, but not always, right? When he was getting blitzed was the Pacers' worst stretch of the season. They just needed a reliable secondary guy all the time and a guy who could do it when he wasn't on the floor. And now they have both of those. So I think that's going to be a fascinating part of this now for the Pacers.
I'm allergic to cats, Tony, so I need you to get the cat out of the room. Just kidding. Yeah, I totally lost my train of thought. But there's, like, one of the things that I like.
It's a perfect trade.
Perfect trade.
Perfect trade. That's what she was saying. I just checked.
One of the things I like about Siakam's fit is, like, he has that nice mid-post game.
Yeah.
And, like, can play in that, and that just gives the Pacers another look that they can go to. And Turner's the, like, perfect big to put next to him because he can spread the floor when needed. So, like, I'm really excited to see, like, how this team meshes together over the rest of this year. And, like, I think it's going to work really well. I'm really excited to watch it.
I agree with that, and I will close with my opening most important thought to me. Andrew Nembhard, Benedict Mather, and Jarace Walker are all still on the Pacers somehow, right? Can I lob you some hypothetical, obvious answer questions?
Yes.
Would you trade Jarace Walker for a pick after, let's say, 17 in the draft? Any draft? Oh, interesting.
No,
Would you trade Ben Mathurin for a pick, 17 or later in any draft?
No, sir.
How about Andrew Nembhard?
No, sir.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And so keeping those while giving up picks that will, again, likely, never certain, the 45-win, fourth seed Pacers fell apart the very next year. A lot changed. But still, nothing is certain in the NBA. But I think from a value perspective, keeping them is very significant. The Pacers did a pretty good job of assessing their situation, using their cap space pretty well. And identifying a good player fit, trading players that were not necessarily in our long-term future, and still keeping their young core. They've also chose a direction. That's something else to discuss in the future, I think. But the 2-timeline part is over. If you're not ready to contribute fairly soon, they can develop maybe one guy, but more than one's going to be tough. So we'll see what this means for the Pacers now their team fits together. There's lots more to come from this. Locked on Raptors, Locked on Pelicans. We'll have more tomorrow. We'll also talk, I guess, a little bit about the Kings game and what happens there. Derek, thank you for the time. Where can people find you and your work and your whiteboard drawing that I don't think anybody got to see?
No, you can't even. It's terrible anyway. But you can find me on Twitter at iPacersblog, iPacers.com. I'll hopefully have some stuff on the Siakam trade and where that puts the Pacers this year and the future and yada, yada, yada.
Yada, yada, yada. That's my least favorite. Not that stupid. That just reminded me of my least favorite writing thing was people say, one thing led to another.
I'm going to start my article with that.
What are those things? Those feel very important to get from point A to point B. You can't just do that. Like if a person got hit by a car one day, you wouldn't write like the person woke up and then they were in the hospital. One thing led to another. It's like there's whatever. This is what people come to the Pascal Siakam podcast and for. Kevin Pritchard got the job as Pacers president. One thing led to another, and now Pascal Siakam is on the Indiana Pacers. Skip all the rest of the parts in the middle. It doesn't matter. It's going to be fun to break this thing down. I don't think he'll play in Sacramento, but we'll cover everything as soon as we can here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. I'm on Twitter at Tony R. East. A lot of these details we talked about today currently in my feed. This show is at Locked On Pacers. Plenty more to come. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day. We will see you soon.